Guys, after subscribing to this channel, please make sure that you also press the bell icon so that no notification, no new video of mine, any educational video, is missed by anybody.
So I welcome one and all once again for the class in OSCE. For all those students who joined in late, everyone is trying to answer these questions in their own pen and paper. And once they are done with this, they're going to share it on the chat room. For everybody who doesn't know how to enter the chat room, all you have to go is on the main channel and just click on the pinned message. You'll automatically enter the chat room. For any doubts, any chat, anything you want to ask me, you can do from there. All right. So please try to answer each question. You'll get 4 minutes for each question. All right, guys. The time is up for the first question. I understand some of you are joined late, but I can't give that much more time. Let's discuss the first slide. Very easy, actually. Mention 2 clinical scenarios where prenatal detection of gender is indicated. So you know that what indication is there for the gender detection. One is definitely if there is any X-linked disorders and if there is any history of congenital adrenal hyperplasia, because we need to know that if the previous child was having congenital adrenal hyperplasia, we need to definitely sex determine this particular child, and if we already know the sex beforehand, it will be rather easier to break the news. So these are 2 definite indications for prenatal detection of gender. SGA and FGR, we recently did a case discussion with my batch, and you can keep posting, guys. Very good. Everybody who's finished, please keep posting. Okay, that will only tell me how much time management you people are doing. It's all right. First question can definitely have a little bit of time, variation for different people. Takes time to focus, to understand the system in the class, then to post, to understand how to put the message. I understand that. That's fine. SG and FGR we did recently in my case discussions. Beautiful case discussion we had on FGR and SG. In fact, I think I posted it on the group as well. So, everybody in this class should know that, first of all, the case discussions are going on live every night in my last minute revision group. So everybody who wants to join can still join because we're still left for 10 days and your exams are in, 15 days or so. And you'll get time to revise as well. Plus, whatever little bit of revision you can do with me, you have a chance to do that, right? So we're doing back-to-back case discussions every night in which you get to present the case to me. We can have a case discussion. That's every night from 8 p.m. onwards, and I keep posting it to the group, the main groups, that everybody knows that you have a chance. Anyways, so we did a case discussion on SG and FGR baby, and that came out to be this particular definition is extremely important, that SG is any baby's less than 10 centile, but when it adds on with a Doppler flow inadequacy, maybe earlier on with uterine artery increased pulsatility index, or later on umbilical artery reverse flows, absent flows, or just high pulsatility index, this is all actually fetal growth restriction and no more SGA. So this is the definition, correct? That's what you have to write down. The first answer is the 2 X-linked disorders as well as congenital adrenal hyperplasia. These two names is enough for you. X-linked and CH, congenital adrenal hyperplasia. What is resistance index? What is pulsatility index? Come on, this you should know by now. So it is PSV minus EDV upon mean. Okay, this is pulsatility index, and we usually focus now on this basically because the denominator is mean. And resistance index is peak systolic PSV minus EDV, but it's upon PSV. So that is the difference between resistance index and pulsatility index. In actual theoretical terms, this is the meaning, but in the realistic terms, in more practical term, we depend more on pulsatility index because it's got more broader vision, more sensitivity, and because it's got mean as a denominator, so it's more flexible and generalized. Components of biophysical profile, guys, otherwise also you should know. You know why? Because for every, especially for decreased fetal movements, fetal growth restriction, many times we say we follow up with BPP. And I have a habit of asking, can you tell me the components of BPP? Can you give me the components of ACOG score? So that thing you can never skip. Okay, anytime, every time you are at the risk of being caught for, this BPP profile, what are the parameters, ACOG score, what are the Bishop score, these scores you cannot forget. Okay, same with neonatal resuscitation, so many times asked in your examination, and at the same time extremely important. So here are the scores. So one is definitely NST, which you do, which gynecologists can also do. It has to be carried on for 20 to 40 minutes, and it needs to have at least 2 or more accelerations within the span of 20-40 minutes. Fetal breathing, fetal movement, fetal tone, and amniotic fluid. So 1 and 2, that is non-stress test and amniotic fluid index, is like instant. I mean, non-stress test can be done in the labor room and we can add the score to it. And amniotic fluid index can be done by seeing the vertical pockets, right? It has to be this deepest single vertical pocket has to be above or equal to 4 centimeters, right? So it should not be less than 2. So you have a score of 0 or you have a score of 2. Can you see that? If it is more than 2, at least 2 or more than 2, it's fair enough. But it's less than 2, 0. Score is 0. It's nothing 1. Okay. In the same way, fetal tone, fetal movement, and fetal breathing. Now, all these are different parameters, guys. Fetal breathing means one or more episodic, episode of rhythmic breathing. That means the chest required for more than 30 seconds. Fetal movement, more than 3 discrete body or limb movements. Okay. And fetal tone means extension and flexion. Now, many people, they confuse fetal movements with fetal tone because they're saying movement of extension and flexion, that means that is fetal movement. No, it is not. Fetal movement means any discrete movements. Just the flapping of the hands can be sufficient. That can be more called as discrete fetal movements. Every time the baby does a complete flexion, extension, and flexion, only then you can call it a fetal tone. So for that, you have to wait for 20 to 40 minutes as long as this whole BPP keeps going on. And anything less than 4, you have to take immediate action. Less than 6 is equivocal, and 8 and above is good score. Any doubts? Any confusions? Anyone? Can we move ahead, guys? All right. All right, guys. Let's move forward. Next question is this, and start answering. You'll get 4 minutes. So I'll discuss it now because the time is up and I have a few answers with me. Very good, Shrishti. Very good. Rosalind, really nice. Anshika, you're always there. Excellent. So these are all my students, previous students, current students, doing very well. Isha, yeah, all of them. Great. Now I'll just give you the answers. This is actually laser photocoagulation. Okay, because you can see that it's photocoagulating. This is not amnioreduction. This is photocoagulation because it's doing the photocoagulation of the channeling vessels in between, isn't it? The veno-venous and the arteriovenous malformations and the channels in between, which is the reason why you have TTTS, isn't it? So all those aberrant channels, it's just photocoagulating, and the fetoscope is inserted, and it's done in twin-twin transfusion syndrome. Now, I taught you it is FBDHD. Quintero staging, FBDHD. That means, first of all, fluid change will be seen. Okay, one is going to have more, one is going to have less. So fluid, then bladder. Bladder will be gone in one of the donor twin, right? It will not be seen. Then comes the D. That means Doppler flows will start shifting. H, hydrops will set in, and then death. Finally, will be death. So this is what you have to write down. Discordant fluid, first of all, then the bladder will be missing, and then abdominal Doppler, hydrops, and death. So Quintero is pretty easy. Now coming down to mention any 4 in utero procedures and their indications. So you have many, like fetoscopic surgery is not only done for TTTS. Fetoscopic surgery is done for congenital diaphragmatic hernia. We do a procedure called feto. Many times I've repeated it when I was doing the last minute revision with answer bank, right? Then chaos, that is congenital high airway obstruction also, that you can mention any 2. Then percutaneous procedures, you have many percutaneous procedures, especially if you have cardiac catheter procedures for aorticopulmonary valvuloplasty for stenosis. If you have really bad stenosis and baby will be dead in utero, you try to do that. Then you do TRAP, you do a radiofrequency ablation. Not only that, you do a shunt therapy in CAM, CCA, congenital cystic aberrant malformation. And you always do thoracoamniotic shunt for pleural effusion. Not only that, psychoamniotic shunt for bladder. This you should always remember. These 2 things. If there is a baby's pleural effusion, then there is a thoracoamniotic shunt. Thoracoamniotic shunt. And if there is bladder valves are there, that means bladder outlet opposite, you have a psychoamniotic shunt. Very easy to remember. They are percutaneous procedures. An exit procedure, an entire question has been asked in answer bank. So you should know that also. So exit is mostly there in CDH or after feto. If that gets kind of blocked or that does not work, so in congenital lipomatic hernia, you do a intubation, then you take out the baby. So that's called exit procedures, right? Or in case of very small jaw, micrognathia, neck tumors, airway obstruction, you do exit procedures. And then, of course, you do frank open fetal surgery. You do in myelocele or in sacrococcygeal teratoma. We have to take it out and then take out the baby. So these are certain in utero procedures, and these are the indications. Not a very difficult question, but you should at least remember, my trick to telling everybody how to go about with these kind of questions which are lengthy is that first of all, do all those questions which you know, and then write down the skeleton first of all, and then scribble the answers, and you will get time. 4 minutes is sufficient. This is the reason why we are practicing, to understand how is it in the exam. So new questions are being thrown to you. These are not repeated questions. These are not your exam asked questions which you already know. These are designed on the grounds of questions asked in your DNB to give you a practice how to handle these different scenarios. All right, guys. Any questions, anyone? Any questions, anybody? All right. Moving on to the next question. 4 minutes time starts now. Just see this. I have questions coming up. Okay, here are the questions. And I'll just post it here so that all of you find it easy to, and you don't have to go back again. Right. Can you see and do it now? These are all my students. They're doing really well. I'm very happy with the speed. I'm very happy with the accuracy. I'm very happy with the focus. And I need everyone to buck up. Very good, Srishti. By the way, since all of you are there in the class, please make sure that you see the schedule for the next week. Okay? Everybody has been appointed a case presentation and the case discussion. People have been allotted the same. I want everyone to go through the schedule and let me know in case you're having any issues. But please try to be on time because it's hardly a matter of an hour. You have to present and just discuss the case. That's it. Right. Yeah. All right. Great. Very good, Sheelu. I was missing you. Where had you been? Sheelu, where had you been? I really missed you after the Practical Pro series. Very well done. Okay, everybody who's been answering, I appreciate your efforts, and here are the answers. Yes, great, Rashi. So, instruments number 1 is Doyne's retractor, 2 is Devers, C is Landon's bladder retractor mostly, and D is Balfour's self-retaining retractor. I'm sure you've seen all of them. They're very, very common. I've not taken any, odd-looking retractors. So you know all these. This is Doyne's retractor. This one is your, this one is your Devers retractor. This is your, of course, you must be seeing, you must have used it, but you must not be knowing the name. So it's actually a bladder retractor, which we call as Landon's retractor. If you work with any of your senior consultants, you must have heard them say Landon's many times. And of course, everybody knows this is the Balfour's retractor. This is self-retaining. And specifically, I asked about D. What are the 2 uses? So it's self-retaining. So the biggest thing is that. So to retract the abdominal wall all around, first of all, okay? And second is to expose the field without any assistant. So first of all, it's the entire, area gets opened up, which is extremely very, essential, especially with, if you've operated with oncosurgeons, you'll see that they love this retractor because they don't have a lot of, if they ask every assistant to keep retracting only, then who's going to concentrate in the surgery? So they use this Balfour's retractor, which is self-retaining, first of all. Self-retaining is excellent, but the second thing is also it kind of gives you a wide exposure. It retracts entire area of the abdominal wall. So it's not that only posterior flap or interior flap or that is being retracted at one point in time, but it's doing the entire. So it gives you a broad vision, which you obviously require in difficult surgeries. Sterilization, everyone has written correct. Autoclaving, boiling, that's correct. Mention one more retractor which is not given there. Morris retractor. I think many of you have used Zerni's retractor. That's also fine with me. I don't mind. Morris retractor is the one which I have used over here.